Israel's public perception is so that when the Nelk Boys interview Benjamin Netanyahu, that act in and of itself is indicative of how far Israel has fallen. Why the are you a goddamn war criminal with an ICC warrant out for your arrest, and you're going on the Nelk Boys podcast? And not only that, but also when you go on the Nelk Boys podcast, it doesn't actually offer you positive PR. It just ends up collapsing the PR for the Nelk Boys. Because that's the reality here. Because like Nelk Boys interview Benjamin Netanyahu, right? If you were to ask me ahead of time, if they were to ask me ahead of time, I would have told them not to do it. But this to me shows desperation from Israel. They have no allies with the exception of mainstream media, but even they realize that regardless of how many mainstream media attempts they make, they're still not going to be able to change the way people see Israel. It's over. It's done. It is a global pariah. And it's such a global pariah that sending Benjamin Netanyahu on the Full Send podcast with this idiotic assumption that, the Nelk Boys podcast is going to make a bunch of right-wingers look at Benjamin Netanyahu in a positive way is so stupid. It is a spectacularly stupid and spectacularly desperate attempt of trying to do propaganda. It's shocking how bad this situation is. The reason why I'm not like as upset, I guess, as the rest of the internet is because maybe I'm so used to mainstream outlets doing unlimited PR for Israel over and over again that like when I see something like this, when I see an attempt from the Israeli state to try and do propaganda for the Israeli state by sending Benjamin Netanyahu of all people to the Nelk Boys podcast, I see that as a major self-own. And it's also yet another indication that not only have they fallen apart in terms of the PR, that their reputation is so bad that when you have a head of a state, like a head of a foreign state, if you were to just like remove the fact that he is a genocidaire, if you have this head of a state on a podcast, and instead of people's reaction being like, "Oh, dude, this is sick," their reaction is incredibly negative, and it literally hurts the Nelk Boys more than it helps Benjamin Netanyahu and more than it helps the Nelk Boys. If I were to put myself in their mindset for a second, okay, slamming happy dads and, ripping lip pillows, upper deckies, and doing crypto gambling or whatever. And I've already interviewed Donald Trump multiple times. I've been on his plane, Air Force One, Trump Force One, and I've interviewed Elon Musk. Like, I've interviewed people that other people have considered villains. In my mind, I'm thinking, what's the difference? You know what I mean? What's the difference? I'm just looking for, there's like content to be made out of interviewing a foreign head of state. The only difference, however, is that while Trump is also a villain, and so is Elon Musk, what these guys don't understand is that the only thing Benjamin Netanyahu is famous for is doing a genocide. Benjamin Netanyahu is such a repulsive, toxic, cancerous individual in what he represents that even the right is attacking the Nelk Boys now. Like, they're eating it from both ends. That, to me, is a bigger story than the fact that the Nelk Boys even interviewed or what kind of propaganda Benjamin Netanyahu was able to do. I will also make one more statement about how many of these like both sides morons out there have been trying to actively use my commentary against the Nelk Boys on this process to say, says you would ask Benjamin Netanyahu if he watches One Piece. No, I wouldn't. You want to know why I wouldn't? Because, as I've said before, one, I didn't even interview a member of Ansar Allah. I interviewed a random Yemeni teenager who I thought was a part of the Ansar Allah movement. But even if he was a part of the Ansar Allah movement, I would have had a more positive interview with him than I would with Benjamin Netanyahu. Because Benjamin Netanyahu is a genocidaire. Ansar Allah, on the other hand, is responding to the genocide that Israel is committing against the Palestinian population. I don't do this like weird neutralization, this weird moralizing. I don't do this like cowardly, both sides are actually kind of bad. No, there is no both sides in a fucking genocide. So it's very strange when people try to do that, where they're like, well, Hasan, you interviewed a 19-year-old Yemeni teenager who's only known famine his whole life. Isn't that, and you asked him like silly ass humanizing questions. Isn't that the same as like humanizing Benjamin Netanyahu? If you think that a random Yemeni teenager or even the head of the Ansar Allah movement is in any way, shape, or form comparable to one of the most successful ethnic cleansers of our generation in modern society, you are a delusional little freak. You have no understanding. You have no concept of like what these things look like. You are comparing two children at kindergarten fighting one another to a serial killer, rape. You are not a serious person. All right, let's continue here.
This is fucking nuts.
This
dude.
is so crazy. We are so not qualified to do this.
No, this is
That's what's interesting about this. We're just not. We just should not be doing this.
well, we're too far too gone.
Here we have the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's about to walk into the podcast right now. This is probably one of the most, if not the most controversial podcast we
For sure, the most
have
we've
ever done.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe not the most controversial we'll ever do.
Maybe not,
But
maybe though.
I mean, this issue is just like, and by the way, I want to say too, I'm not claiming to be an expert on this issue or anything like that. I've kind of just probably like a lot of you guys that, you know, you read stuff online. And I feel like on the internet now too, it's like, you don't even know what's real anymore. Like you read shit and it's like, you see a headline and it's like, is this true? Is this not true? So
Anyway, yeah, this is like they're starting off talking about how ill-equipped they are to have this conversation, and then they have this demon sit down
to see this thing, right?
yeah, Prime Minister Netanyahu with us.
He's like, "Hello, I'm here to have slam some brewskis, you know, bitches get money. Hello, Nelk Boys. I'm here to talk to you about Israel and how we must defend Israel. I love doing upper deckies. My fellow Nelks."
I think there's never been a friend like Donald Trump in the White House for Israel. I think he's a remarkable leader. I think he's changing history. He said he'll make America great again. He's already done it. You know, America is widely admired now around the world, and especially after our joint operation against this regime that wanted to, you know, chance
With this
death
bomb
to
ass
America,
dick.
death to Israel. Well, I think together we've shown the world a different face of America. Very powerful, very directed, very resolute.
You guys are very tight, right? Would you call it a bromance?
Well, you might. I mean, we've known each other several decades, and you know, I really like him.
What do you like?
Yeah, this is bro. This is, oh God, this is so bad. It's just so bad. He's like, yeah, I love Donald Trump. We have such a good relationship. We also love slamming happy dads together. We love slamming happy dads together on the Nelk Boys podcast. I can't wait. I can't wait to do it together. I don't even know if I could watch this whole thing.
Donald Trump can be very funny.
Of
You know,
course.
he can be very funny. He can
Especially off camera,
He
right?
can absolutely. He can split your. You know, you sort of sit there and you start guffawing because it's so funny. And also, I'll tell you something else. That Sarah, who's a psychologist, and she, you know, psychologists. You know, psychologists.
Of course.
They look at people. They identify very quickly with that. You know what she said to me about Donald Trump? She said he's a good person. He has a good heart. He wants to do good, and that is something that I think that.
Yeah, this is him. Remember, he's playing to the audience. He is hyping up his closeness to Donald Trump, a figure that the Nelk Boys audience obviously likes. Remember, Benjamin Netanyahu is a demon, but also he is a very successful propagandist. This motherfucker's been the leader of Israel for decades at this point. Understand something here. Like, every single thing that he's saying and the very fact that he's doing this interview is calculated. And as I described to the Nelk Boys yesterday, the reason why he's doing this interview with the Nelk Boys when he won't do this interview with Haaretz or any number of different Israeli outlets, including Israeli outlets that are literally promotional to him, because Benjamin Netanyahu notoriously does not speak to Israeli outlets. He barely does interviews with American outlets. So why is he offering an hour and 13 minutes to the Nelk Boys? This is a question everyone should be asking. And it's precisely what I told the Nelk Boys, is because he knows that this is not going to be contentious. He knows that they're going to ask a couple questions and never push back with accurate information. That's the whole point. Now, of course, it's still a failure from the Israeli perspective, because I think these guys do not understand how Israel is viewed and how especially Benjamin Netanyahu is viewed, because Benjamin Netanyahu himself is not even liked by liberal Zionists at this point. Everybody sees him as an off-ramp. Even if you want to launder the reputation of Israel, you still have to say, well, it's Bibi's war. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's war. It's Benjamin Netanyahu's doing. So, like, there are only a handful of people that actually like Satan incarnate here, okay? That's precisely the reason why when you look at this interview and then you look at the comments, everyone is going, I miss when YouTube used to show dislikes. Nelk 2015, funny prank channel. Nelk 2025, propaganda machine for governments. You guys didn't question him once. This is crazy. Israel are so desperate for positive PR, they sent their prime minister to podcast with a bunch of pranksters. Zero pushback. You literally let a war criminal talk freely. You think Content Brain podcasters would check these polls? No, but Content Brain podcasters are receptive, incredibly receptive to their audiences. So they're not seeing those polls, they're seeing the comments. And that's precisely the reason why yesterday they turned around and were like interviewing anyone and everyone they possibly could on you know, what they did. And they were like looking for anyone to just basically be like, nah, it's cool that you guys did this. And they didn't get that. And then they wanted to do this whole like, well, we're trying to get both sides on this issue. We're trying to do both sides on this issue. There are no both sides of the genocide, but there is also no feasible way of even getting both sides on this issue. Who are you going to do? Who are you going to interview? A Palestinian child that is being malnourished, that is being starved to death by this guy that you interviewed? You can't do that. So it's just like a spectacular fuck up of epic proportions. And the reason why it's a spectacular fuck up of epic proportions is because you have to ask the question, like, who is this for? Like, no one wins in this. The Nelk Boys don't actually get any sort of positive clout out of this. They only get ridicule and negative associations. Like, the anti-Semitic people in the Nelk Boys audience are going to be like, oh, you're bought out by Jewish money, blah, 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 all this shit. And the other people that are also anti-Israel for understandable reasons beyond the anti-Semitism are going to look at this and go, you've done propaganda for a genocidal welfare state that relies on American tax dollars. And you guys just like, you know, had this guy on and allowed him to yap. And I know they wanted Motaz. They reached out to me, or their producer reached out to me to link them up with Motaz. And I told them Motaz would never do that. I tried to tell Steiny that as well. I'm working on trying to see if I can find someone that would actually go in front of this audience and talk to them and offer them the Palestinian position, the pro-Palestinian position, but it's very difficult. It's not helping these clowns, for the record. For those of you saying, stop helping these clowns, are you stupid? This is about trying to get in front of as large an audience as possible, a person who has, you know, mental clarity, a person who is convincing. This is more so to inform an uninformed audience. I'm sorry, this is not about doing PR. You guys can see it that way if you want, but I don't give a shit. Even if it is technically damage control or some shit like that, I have my purpose here is to try and get the truth in front of as many people as possible. It is going to be virtually impossible for them to get anyone who is like Palestinian after they interviewed literal Adolf Hitler. That's just the situation at hand. Anyway.
Did you have any type of relationship with Biden?
Not the same. I've known Biden for, 40 years? Almost as long. Well, both of them. Over the decades, it was a different relationship. It was a friendship, but also it evolved into, how shall I say this? Severe disagreements.
Like, what's severe disagreement? This is bullshit. Biden gave him everything he wanted and more. This is, once again, him trying to hit a partisan angle here to make it seem like there was any sort of daylight between the Biden administration and the Trump administration. The only reason why he's saying that is so that he can win favor in his mind off of the Nelk Boys audience by being like, oh yeah, we had severe disagreements. Really? Because it didn't bear itself out in the conflict. What was it? It was unlimited genocide then, and it's unlimited genocide now. Fantastic stuff from the Biden administration, by the way, throwing everything in the tank, including the election, losing the election to a goddamn monster, an idiotic, incompetent monster, as a matter of fact, who is accelerating American fascism in broad daylight so that they could continue Israel's genocide. Great stuff.
And with Donald Trump, we've had powerful agreements. And where there's no daylight between an American president and an Israeli prime minister, amazing things can happen. like our common enemies who chant death to Israel, death to America, and want to develop atomic bombs and the means to deliver them to this city and to every part of America, all of a sudden they're not so intimidating. All of a sudden
Biden didn't let him bomb Iran. That training started under Biden. The training, the military campaign for bombing Iran and the training by the U.S. Air Force to bomb Iranian nuclear sites, that mission that was conducted under Trump literally started under Biden. But of course, this is precisely the reason why Benjamin Netanyahu is never going to come to someone like myself and have a conversation like this with someone like myself, which was what the Nelk Boys were asking as well to me yesterday. And I was like, there's obviously a difference between you and me in terms of like interviewing someone like Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a reason why he would never do this. There's a reason why he's doing the Nelk Boys podcast instead. Because when he says stuff like this, no one is going to call that into question.
How do you feel about the Americans' opinion on Israel right now?
Well, look, I think the broad segments of the American public support Israel, but I'm concerned that the young people in America, some of them are getting the wrong picture of Israel, vilification, demonization. You can feed them a lot of...
They're getting the wrong picture of Israel, which is why I'm here to address the right picture of Israel. And I'm doing a spectacularly bad job at it because everyone sees the one picture, and that is murdered, mutilated, starving children. That is the only picture. That's the only thing that is on people's minds. Israel's association with rebuilding, recrafting, and popularizing a previously like religious language like Hebrew, its nation state project, its advancements in pharmaceuticals, all this stuff gone. It's done. It's done. You are a cartoonishly evil Nazi country that is doing a child holocaust in broad daylight, in real time. Of course it's going to breed enmity. Of course it's going to breed resentment. And there's no amount of podcast that you can go on that will change that reality. And Nelk Boys are doing sympathization for them, yet we infantilize them doing this. I'm not. And I don't think anyone here is either. I don't know why you're saying we infantilize them doing this. I think you have to match this desperate attempt from Israel with like the impact that it's having. And if the goal here from Benjamin Netanyahu is to try and win favors and curry favors in the Nelk Boys crowd, because in his mind, he unironically thinks, I guess, or at least someone in his circle thinks that Nelk Boys were directly responsible for Trump winning. Someone told him that the Nelk Boys were the ticket to Trump's electoral victory. And this f***ing moron believed that. That's why he's doing this. And that moron is probably Dana White, for the record. It's probably Miriam Adelson and it's probably Dana White. Literally. These guys on the Republican side don't even know how they won the goddamn election. Because of how you coddled them yesterday, you wouldn't be doing this for anyone else who platforms Sneeko, Tate, Trump, Netanyahu, etc. What are you talking about? I think a lot of you have a complete misunderstanding of coddling. I told the Nelk Boys, one, that Benjamin Netanyahu used them like a fleshlight, that they gave the equivalent interview of like CNN, and that they would be tried in Nuremberg under normal circumstances in a similar fashion to journalists that actually propagandized for the Nazi state, and that they had basically done the equivalent of an Adolf Hitler interview. What part of that is coddling?
What do you think the biggest misconceptions are about Israel?
Well, first of all, they don't know what kind of an open society it is, how pluralistic. I mean, we live in the heart of the Middle East, okay? Iran is not that far away. In Iran, they hang gays by cranes. In Israel, probably Tel Aviv is one of the, the most open, liberal-minded city on earth.
No. Don't hype that up too much. Remember, the Trump base is not that open to the gay stuff. It's not that woke. You know what I mean? It's not a good thing that Israel's woke like that.
Israel is a high.
We visited there, yeah.
No, it's completely different.
Our assistant's gay too. He had a good time.
Well, you could vouch.
Yeah, no, he had.
What's the difference between this and the stuff we have heard as a defense of Israel before? One line between all of them? No, of course not. There is no difference, because there is no way to differentiate between Hasbara, because the more people are aware of Israeli violence against the Palestinians, the less avenues Israel has to propagandize. So all of the arguments basically become one. Israel's an apartheid state. Israel's an apartheid state committed to ethnic cleansing. Its societal underpinnings, its fundamentals are born out of this fascist ideology of Zionism, which is an ethno-religious supremacist ideology. It's a Jewish supremacist, exterminationist ideology. Okay? It is no different than what the Nazis believed, but instead of the outgroup being Jews and socialists, communists, and the Roma population, and whoever was not a part of the in-group of the Ubermensch or the Volk. In this circumstance, Jews are a part of the in-group, and the out-group is everyone else in the vicinity. That's it. It's the same exact ideology with the victims being swapped out for someone else.
So, you know, I mean, look at that. How about women? Okay. Women in Iran, they shoot the women. They shot this extraordinarily brave and beautiful woman, shot on the sidewalk because she showed too much hair. In Israel, women are, you know what women are.
They shot Masa Amini, I think. They can't even remember her name. Okay. How many Palestinian women have you shot? How many Palestinian journalists have you assassinated? They killed Shireen Abu Akleh, who's an American citizen, dude. They did that in 2021. And then they raided her funeral.
Israeli police have attacked mourners and pallbearers at the funeral of the Palestinian-American journalist Shireen Abu Akleh in Jerusalem.
And even the pallbearers had to retreat, as police kicked and beat them with batons. And the coffin slips to the ground. They marked yet another death in a conflict where it is almost agonizingly routine, but which has brought the world's spotlight back and remembered a life that should never have ended this way. Tom Bateman, BBC News, Jerusalem.
Like, these guys have nothing. Israel has nothing. They can't be like, oh, Iran is so violent. Iran is so brutal. It's like, bro, you literally had a riot, a January 6th for rape. It is a cartoonishly evil society by every metric. What are you talking about?
It's true of nightlife. It's true of the startup nation, the incredible ingenuity and entrepreneurship, incredible freedom. Israel is a paragon of freedom in an area that doesn't exactly enjoy freedom. And to have young Americans march and support these mass rape, these people who beheaded men, who burned.
Once again, mass rape. I don't know if you're talking about Israel, because you should be talking about Israel, because Israel had a policy where they tried to prosecute at 6 of the concentration camp guards at Side Tayman prison, okay? It is a concentration camp where they would pack up Palestinians from the Gaza Strip and then ship them off into this concentration camp. 6 of the concentration camp guards were caught on camera, on CCTV footage, raping the Palestinian prisoners to death. The Israeli government knew that there was an ICC prosecution being conducted into war crimes. So they wanted to use the principle of complementarity to defend themselves as a shield, to be like, see, we're actually investigating ourselves and we won't find any wrongdoing, but we're investigating ourselves nonetheless. So you can't investigate us, because that's how international organs of justice work. International organs of justice can only investigate and prosecute you for war crimes if you are not sufficiently dealing with the war crimes that you are committing. So knowing that, they literally, knowing that there was a UN report coming out on sexual violence that the Israeli state was committing to, was committing against the Palestinians, that they tried to at least prosecute some of these rape. They literally had a pro-rape January 6th. They were armed and they forcibly released these concentration camp guards. There was an emergency session in the Israeli Knesset where one of Benjamin Netanyahu's own party members unironically said that their concentration camp guards had a right to rape Palestinians. They had a right to rape them. That's what he said. This is all on camera. It sounds made up because it's so insane. But it's not made up at all. It is literally on camera. Many people, obviously, are completely oblivious to this reality because Western media does not cover it. And the reason why Western media does not cover it is because if Western media did cover it, the Israeli approval ratings that are already incredibly low would be so goddamn low that people would be demanding military intervention. If your parents knew what you knew about what goes on in Israel, they would be demanding military intervention. They'd be like, we have to invade. We have to invade Israel with our military force to put an end to this madness. Western media understands this reality, which is why they literally outflank Israeli publications when it comes to covering all of the madness and all of the violence that unfolds in Israel. That is precisely the reason why, like Haaretz or even Ynet, which is a right-wing institution, it's a right-wing outlet, it's a right-wing Israeli newspaper, has better coverage on all of the affairs of the military and the misconduct in the military than the New York Times does. Because the New York Times has the New York Times understands its readership and does not want its readership to despise Israel. So it cannot accurately convey events that are unfolding in Israel. But I will go even further. Remember, this man in the middle right there is the primary rapist. And at first he went on television to talk about how he had a right to rape the Palestinian prisoners to death. Then he unmasked himself and became a television personality. The Israeli soldier was caught raping Palestinians on camera, is now being honored and celebrated like a celebrity star at shows in Israel. And if it were true, Israeli rabbi defense soldiers accused of Palestinian prisoner. A video shows a rabbi in Israel blessing a soldier accused of Palestinian detainee, defending his actions, even if the soldier is to be found guilty. I'm sorry, dog. You can't have your prime minister running around and being like, oh, these guys were fighting are rape. They're rape beheaders. Yeah. Over a year after their arrest, 5 Israeli soldiers accused of beating and sexually abusing a Palestinian detainee at Sdei Teiman have yet to face trial. Now a military judge recommends mediation instead. The Israeli military has offered more severe penalties to Israeli Jewish soldiers in the military that cook hot dogs on Saturday than rape who Palestinian prisoners in a concentration camp on CCTV. Yes, because Jews are obviously not supposed to work on Saturday. It's Shabbos. So when the Israeli occupying force soldiers actually went to a kitchen and cooked up hot dogs, they got a more severe penalty than these rapists did.
So Israel is a great free society and the best partner that America has anywhere on earth.
Great people there for sure. When we visited, everyone was so welcoming and people were inviting us over for dinner and stuff. But I see, like, that's the thing too. I'm not claiming to be an expert too, but I'll just read stuff on like X and like people will say like Israel's killing babies or like they're starving people.
That's completely false. In fact, the reason we have civilian casualties in Gaza is because Hamas, who are basically horrible murderers and killers, okay, committed to our...
Oh my God, what a different opinion from Benjamin Netanyahu. Nelk Boys don't even like actually call into question whether he's like murdering children, something that we know is happening without a sliver of doubt here. Okay, that is 100% happening. Israel has killed a classroom full of kids every single day since October 8th, 2023. Oh, well, I see comments on Twitter of people accusing Israel of like, slaughtering children. It's like, that's not comments on Twitter. It's just an accurate reflection of reality. But of course, he instantly turns around and says exactly what any Israeli official would say on any other mainstream media outlet. He turns around and says, oh, Hamas are using children as human shields. Bullshit.
Destruction and your destruction. They say so openly. I mean, they say the big enemy, the real enemy, the great Satan is America. And Israel is the small Satan. But it's a small Satan that is standing in their way of conquering with other Iranian proxies, conquering the Middle East, and then we move on to you. So America is the great Satan, and America, needs to disappear. And we stand in their way. But one of the things you have to understand...
Hamas is a national liberation group, okay? Their goals are simply to end the Israeli occupation. Hamas has never committed an act of terror or military conquest outside of the occupied Palestinian territories. Never. They never have. Just so you understand. So what was the October attack then? October 7th? Did you not hear me say occupied Palestinian territory, like historic Palestinian territory? Wasn't that Hamas? I'm losing my mind. No, that wasn't just Hamas. That was the entirety of the Palestinian liberation groups, okay? It was the entire resistance front. And that is literally within the confines of historic Palestinian territory. What the are you talking about? Do you think October 7 took place in, I don't know, Washington, D.C. or something? What are you talking about? There is a difference between Al-Qaeda and ISIS, which are invested in conquest. They are invested in conquest. They are internationalists. They are what is known as like jihadist terrorists. When someone says like, oh, this person is a jihadi terrorist, like they're talking about Al-Qaeda, they're talking about ISIS. They're talking about these groups that operate internationally, these groups that have a larger conquest in mind. There are many different formations of these groups, and there are different branches. Like in Syria, ISIS has the Al-Nusra Front, for example, and they get a tremendous amount of tremendous amount of funding from our ally, Saudi Arabia. They get training in our other allied state, Pakistan. Yes, ISIS and Al-Nusra didn't get along. They're more Al-Qaeda. It doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is that these guys, these groups, these militancies have expansionist interests in mind, and they operate within the confines. If they have an opportunity, they operate within the confines of like the Western world as well. Hamas, on the other hand, has one singular goal in mind because it is a simple expression of the emancipatory need of Palestinians. That's why we always say, if it's not Hamas today, it's going to be Hamas 2 tomorrow. Because as long as the Israeli occupation continues, as long as death and destruction continues against Palestinians, there's always going to be some kind of resistance against that. It is legal and moral to resist against occupation under international law. It's legal under international law, and it is also the moral thing to do. Of course you're going to resist. What the f*** do you mean?
Gaza is the densest urban environment you can find, and Hamas embeds itself in the civilian population of Gaza, the Palestinians, okay? We tell the Palestinians, hey, leave, because after they butchered us and our women and beheaded our men and burned our babies, we have to remove this threat. So we come in to take care of the Hamas terrorists. But the Hamas terrorists don't leave the civilian neighborhoods. And we say to the civilians, we call them up because we have their telephone numbers. We say, leave, please leave. We send them leaflets, millions of leaflets, please leave.
Dude, you guys are so nice. Oh, the illegal occupation and blockade that you have over an entire 2 million population of indigenous people that you have literally pushed into this strip, which is one of the most densely populated open prisons on the planet. You send leaflets before you bomb their homes. That's sick. Yeah, they have their telephone numbers. Exactly. One must call into question how you have the telephone numbers and the population registry of all of these people in this supposedly sovereign state. How is that possible? And if you have this level of intelligence, how have you bombed every single building in the Gaza Strip? Why have you bombed every single building in the Gaza Strip? That's the question. Real confusing. Perhaps it's because this is not a military conquest or a military campaign at all. It is just pure ethnic cleansing. That is the goal here. This is what happens when you have an entire population, an entire indigenous population under the thumb of brutal military occupation, criminal military occupation. They do not get trials under the civil governance division. They do not go to a regular court. The judge, jury, executioner is a random Nazi dipshit that's 19 years old and hopped up on fumes that wants to do permanent ethnic cleansing in the strip. That's the judge, jury, and executioner. And everyone that is in the crosshairs is an enemy.
We do everything that is possible that no army has done. They want to leave. You know what Hamas does? They shoot them. You say, we want you to...
Yeah, that's fucking bullshit. Hamas shoots them. Okay, dude. It's so crazy to me that like Hamas, everything is filmed in the Gaza Strip, every single thing. And yet for some reason, there's no footage of this. There's no footage of like the Hamas militants lining up Palestinians and just shooting them for the crime of wanting to leave. It's so strange that the only thing we see is Israeli bombs. Israel has 24/7 surveillance. Israel has drones all over the Palestinian civilian population. They're constantly surveilling the Palestinian civilian population. They're constantly assassinating the Palestinian civil population. And yet, for some reason, they just never catch it in the action. Hamas is just like secretly so good at killing Palestinians that are trying to escape. Palestinians are like, please don't let us be human shields. We don't want to be human shields. And then Hamas just like goes, no, you have to be a human shield. We're going to kill you if you don't. Is the only reason ISIS doesn't invade and take over the Gaza Strip the threat of America? What? No, ISIS has tried to operate within the Gaza Strip. Hamas has executed ISIS militants in the Gaza Strip. Hamas and ISIS are in combat with one another. They are belligerents to one another. ISIS has actively tried to take over the Gaza Strip. Hamas has killed them. Hamas has jailed the ISIS militancy. You know what Israel did? Israel released those prisoners from jail in the chaos of the endless bombing campaign and now actively recruit those Hamas militants that were working in the Gaza Strip. It's known as the Popular Front, as a matter of fact. They use Israeli weapons. They use Israeli gear. They get to operate in the red zone in Rafah under an Israeli bunker. That's their command center. His name is Abu Shabab. Drug dealers and ISIS, did I say Hamas militants? Sorry. ISIS affiliates, ISIS combatants have always operated or tried to operate within the Gaza Strip. Hamas has killed them. Hamas has killed them. Hamas has jailed them. One of the ways that ISIS tries to operate in the Gaza Strip is through illicit drug trafficking. This is how they finance their affairs in the Gaza Strip. They use the same tunnel systems that Hamas is supposedly gun running through to bring in drugs into the Gaza Strip, Captagon and many others. That's the reality. The reality is Hamas, regardless of their tactics, regardless of the war crimes that were committed on October 7, have a just goal. And this is a big problem for a lot of Americans because it just like recircuits it fries their brain when they're like, wait a minute. So the people that I'm supposed to think are the bad guys are actually doing something that I think is like a totally honest and just goal. That doesn't make any sense. That's the problem. That's what's so scary for a lot of people. They can't contend with that reality where they're like, everyone has always told me Israel are the good guys. Everyone has always told me that these guys are our allies. Now you're telling me that our allies are actually the enemy here, and they're doing something so unconscionable, so immoral, and the people that they're doing it to that I've been conditioned into thinking are scary Muslim guys and historically bad guys that deserve all the death and destruction are actually, they have a reasonable goal. That's the problem. That is precisely the reason why the terrorism application here, the vague and illegal definition of terrorism is so useful for a lot of people. You could just go, they're both terrorists and move on. There is no distinction there. That just means everyone that's affiliated with them or associated with them deserve death and destruction. It causes people to refuse to reckon with the reality on the ground. It causes people to refuse to even think that these guys might have a logical thought pattern here, that they're not simply operating on the barbaric notion that they want to decapitate as many Israelis as they possibly can. Because the moment that you actually escape the matrix, if I'm going to use like an Andrew Tate style term here, and start to realize that no, these guys aren't these like barbaric demonic hordes, and they actually have a totally understandable desire to no longer be occupied and murdered by the state of Israel, all of a sudden you have a very different approach to this conversation. All of a sudden, it becomes incredibly hard to justify Israel's actions. Many people will never take that leap in the United States of America. Many people are never going to take that leap. And that's precisely the reason why, because I explain this concept to 35,000, 40,000 people at a time, that the Israeli state sees me as a threat, a massive threat that needs to be eliminated, one that needs to be deplatformed. That's precisely the reason why so many people come in here and say, you're a terrorist, you love terrorism, you're a terrorist every day, because they would rather keep saying that instead of reckoning with the reality that Israel is doing a genocide. And understandably, people are going to resist against that genocide. And they not only have the legal right to resist in arms against the Israeli occupation that is criminal, that is illegal, that is doing a genocide, but they also have a moral responsibility to do so. So if you're coming in here and you've seen clips or something, and you've watched other people consistently say, oh, Hasan's a terrorist, Hasan's a terrorist, Hasan's a terrorist, just think for a moment. Take a deep breath and think for a moment. If Hamas's goals are purely emancipatory, and it is to actually liberate the Palestinian population. It is to actually allow Palestinians to have sovereignty and no longer live under the oppressive thumb of the Israeli occupation that is murdering every single Palestinian without any distinction whatsoever. Do you think this contextualization of Hamas's goals and all of the Palestinian resistance goals, which is a unified front, regardless of their ideological differences, regardless of their differences in tactics, don't you feel like you were maybe wrong initially in the way that you approach the subject matter? Because many people understand that Israel's doing a genocide. They see it. They recognize it. They see that. But then they have no solution to it, where they're like, they're doing a genocide, but I guess every single person has to just sit idly by and take it. no resistance here, please. Do not resist against an occupational force that has been murdering your family and stealing your homes for 80 fucking years, because God forbid if you do that, you'll be branded a terrorist and you're a scary bad guy. They don't want you to take that leap. They don't want you to look at this with a logical framework. I don't know how you can follow the news and not think it unless you're totally in the throes of exceptionalism. A lot of people are. A lot of people are in the throes of exceptionalism. That's the problem.
Because we want to have civilian casualties, because then they can show it on CNN or all these other networks and so on and claim that Israel is deliberately doing this. We're not deliberately doing anything. We'd like them to leave. And in fact, successively during the war, it's been now a year and a half, they finally do leave, most of them. So we've minimized those casualties, but it's not because we seek to have civilian casualties, it's because Hamas wants them. They're willing to sacrifice their own children, their own families, both because they don't really care for human life, but also because they think it's very good propaganda against us. And if they just let...
It's very good propaganda against us. Again, so stupid. It's like, okay, if you know that it's propaganda, if dead children are all... Because that's the only negative consequence of like murdering children from Benjamin Netanyahu's perspective, because he's a truly repulsive, evil man. So he says the only negative byproduct of like murdering Palestinian children is that we look bad. Okay, then don't do it. Don't murder the children. What an incredible way to solve this issue. You're not a natural disaster. You are a nation state, a criminal nation state that has an endless bloodlust for the ethnic cleansing of as many Palestinians as possible, regardless of whether they're men, women, or children. And you make it seem as though you have no control over your own actions. Like, oh, Hamas duped us again. Okay, well, you're the dumbest person on the planet then, I guess. It's the easiest thing on the planet not to kill children, okay? Billions of people do it every day.
Them leave the war zone, get to the safe parts, safe havens that we've created in Gaza. No one would be hurt. And the minute Hamas lays down its arms, surrenders.
By the way, all of this is bullshit because, like, in Israeli media, they very openly maintain the position that they are invested in the permanent occupation of Gaza and the permanent ethnic cleansing of Gaza. So when he says, oh, we're putting them in safe havens and safe zones, that's bullshit. They move the entire population around deliberately over and over again, and they bomb the fucking safe zones. They don't even call them safe zones because there's a legal distinction. That is a legal designation. So they call them safer zones. And they do. They bomb them. They bomb the tent cities over and over and over again. They concentrate them into an increasingly smaller area, and then they bomb that small ass area. And there are no more flyers that they release anyway. It's complete bullshit. Many reports in the field say Israeli soldiers are mainly just doing home demolitions, not searching for the hostages American media portrays. Netanyahu said he ramped up home demolitions to push people to permanently leave the Strip because their goal is the permanent ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population of the Gaza Strip. They have made that clear. They have said it over and over again. They've been saying it since October 8, as a matter of fact. They've been saying it since October 7, as a matter of fact. Every single day, they openly say we have to kill every single one of these demons. Every single day, there is another Israeli official that's like, we want to do genocide. We are doing genocide. We want to keep doing genocide. We love doing genocide. We love killing Palestinian children. And the American media goes, I can't hear you. What did you say? Did you say that you have a honest and just goal, an honest and just military goal here to release the hostage? Is that what you're saying? To release the hostages militarily? Okay, that's what we're going to report on. And it's so fucking crazy because it's become this undeniable reality. Even the dumbest guy you know has seen enough murdered children that are starving in the fucking Gaza Strip that they obviously, this kind of messaging doesn't work anymore, regardless of the fucking media interest in it, in defending Israel's unjustifiable ethnic cleansing campaign.
Maybe we let them leave Gaza. That's the end of the war. No one gets hurt.
What would your message be to Palestinians that just want to have like a peaceful life?
Get rid of Hamas. Help us get rid of Hamas. They torment you. They oppress you. They shoot you in the back of the head. If you want to leave the war zone, they kill you. And if you say a word in protest, they'll kill you. If you're gay.
Hamas is not a fundamentalist religious group. A Hamas fighter could literally be a Christian or atheist. You don't need a religious reason to join Hamas when you're facing annihilation and genocide. It's not also just Hamas either. Al-Qassam is only one wing of the Palestinian militant resistance. Okay, you have the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine, DFLP. You have the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP. You have the Palestinian Islamic Jihad movement. They have their own military wing. These are all different parties that are unified under one goal, which is the emancipation of all Palestinian people. Hamas is just a catch-all term because they've been branded as like the arch villain here in this story. That's it. This is something that I kept repeating over and over again since October 7, that this wasn't a military conquest or a military campaign simply conducted by Hamas or Al-Qassam, if you want to be specific with it. Okay. It is a nationalist front for the liberation of Palestine. It is an emancipatory movement. It is comprised of every type of Palestinian ideology. The only people that are not participating in it are collaborators of the Israeli state. Even Fatah was a part of October 7. Like, it's ridiculous. Yes. PIJ and Al-Qassam are the most relevant at this point. PFLP and DFLP barely exist. One must ask the question, why PFLP and DFLP barely exist? Many of them were the Christian Palestinians, for the record. I wonder why. Well, the reason why is because Israel killed them. Israel assassinated them over and over again.
You're in bad shape, really bad shape. And if you are a woman, you're chattel, you're nothing. You're property. That's the opposite of everything we believe in. We, I say, it's not only Israel, it's you. Mm-hmm. So we're the same.
How do you respond to, like, I'd say there's a lot of American support from the females, from the gays towards Palestine. So how does that make any sense?
That's, gays for Gaza is like chickens for KFC. I mean, that's insane. The whole thing is absurd. Chickens for KFC, right? Gays for Gaza.
Yeah. Repeat it again, dude. It didn't hit the first time. Maybe if you repeat the joke, it'll come across funnier. Oh, it's like chickens for KFC. Allyship is not transactional. I don't give a what someone's point of view is. I don't look through the logs of every Jewish person that was slaughtered in the Holocaust to be like, I wonder if they've had any problematic opinions. No, that is a crime regardless. You know what I mean? It's so stupid. Many people understand this reality. Not only is it overblown, like the mistreatment of gays is completely overblown. Israel itself has a litany of different issues, despite the fact that it presents itself as a Western liberal moral democracy. It has a litany of different homophobic problems. Israel is a nation state where like race mixing is technically not allowed, okay? Let alone interfaith marriages, let alone fucking gay marriage. You have to go to Cyprus to get gay married, okay? And not only that, but the largest number of LGBT Palestinian population murders have come in the hands of the United States and Israel, not Hamas. It's so fucking stupid. None of this makes sense if you are even a little bit knowledgeable about Israel's activity, Israel's behavior, or Palestinian existence in general. First of all, as far as sodomy or homosexuality being criminalized, it's not in the West Bank, just so you understand. And the only anti-sodomy law that is in existence in the Gaza Strip is a holdover from British occupation. It doesn't matter. They overextend. What they use as an argument, if you want to really know about the background of this, is that Israel knows that there are gay Palestinians. So what they do is they'll send in the Mossad, or they'll use they'll use spyware, or they'll honey trap gay Palestinians and blackmail them with footage of them engaging in homosexual acts to collaborate with the Israeli state, which is inherently a very anti-queer action to begin with. And they don't blackmail them because Palestinian society is homophobic. They blackmail them in the same way that you would blackmail anyone with revenge porn, whether it's straight sex or gay sex. It doesn't matter. And then the internal affairs of Hamas, Yahya Sinwar's job straight up was this, okay? He was one of the enforcers of Hamas in his history. The job of enforcers within the Hamas movement, within their civil governance affairs, is to find collaborators and then they execute them, which is fucked up. I agree. It's incredibly fucked up. But to turn around and use that to be like, these guys are homophobic and therefore they deserve death is stupid. Okay, that sounds anti-Semitic, man. I know. Everything I say about Israel sounds anti-Semitic because it's like a criminal enterprise that is doing like comic book levels of evil. This does not work. This does not make any sense. Nobody cares about the militancy when the much larger crime or the reason for the militancy to exist is the apartheid regime or is the colonial enterprise. In this circumstance, that is Israel. The colonial entity sets the standard of violence. And the more violent the colonial entity gets, in this case Israel, the more violent The resistance gets as a response to the violence from the colonial entity. Easy Company was homophobic. America was a segregationist, homophobic, misogynistic hellhole in its domestic affairs. Does that take away from Easy Company's actions against the Nazi regime? No. So shut the up. You don't make that calculation when it comes to Americans and the American military, the Allied forces in World War II. So why the are you trying to make that calculation right now?
Why do they say Israel's like starving the people of Gaza?
Well,
yeah, why do they say that? Because it's true. Among 18 to 29-year-olds, who do you sympathize more with? Palestinians, 44%. Both equally 19%. Israelis, 14%. Unsure, 23%. We got to get those numbers up, Americans. This is a YouGov poll from July 21st.
because we're trying to get the food in, and we let food trucks in, and guess what happens? When
I
we
got to
let them
pee.
in? Hamas steals the food, takes the good chunk for itself. The people of Gaza should have the choice. If they want to leave for other countries, they want a freedom of choice. Why are they locked in? Hell, we're not locking them in. Anybody could leave, but Hamas is locking them in. Suppose they want to leave. They want to go to another country, okay? Why shouldn't they have the freedom of choice to do that? Because this is all upside down, you know? The victim of this horrible terrorism is called the aggressor. The people who are oppressed by Hamas are seen as supporting Hamas. Give them a choice. Give them freedom.
I can't stand this motherfucker, bro. Hamas is stealing the food, stealing the humanitarian aid. Wrong. No evidence ever shown for this. Complete bullshit. Israel is, even if they were, by the way, Israel has under no obligation to stop the flow of aid into the Gaza Strip because that aid has to reach the civilian population. Wrong. Okay? Not only is there already a mechanism of aid distribution that existed in the Strip that worked, okay, in spite of the horrifying realities, Israel stopped this aid from going in. There are thousands of trucks waiting to go into the Gaza Strip. Israel is the only limit here. The aid, under all of these horrifying circumstances, was still reaching the Gazan population. Israel stopped it for that reason. Israel started with the Mossad and the CIA, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, as a scheme. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has pitched itself as the only mechanism that can adequately do deconfliction with the Israeli state. Why do they pitch themselves as that? Because they are a de facto part of the Israeli state. They operate in unison with the IDF, American and Israeli mercenaries working on the Strip to offer a crumb of food to the starving Gazan population. It's literally perfidy. It is illegal. That is precisely the reason why the UN and every single humanitarian group has criticized the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation for stopping the flow of aid and becoming the only way to actually give any food to the Palestinians. It's fucking bullshit.
Give them a life and give them a future. They can't have that with these Hamas stormtroopers. But the amazing thing is, you know, I come here and I see these protests. The people who are protesting for Hamas and against Israel, they burn American flags. They're not only
Nobody cares. I don't give a if they wipe their ass with the American flag. Stop killing them. Stop killing them. It does not matter. Who gives a I'm serious. Who gives a It's so stupid, dude. It is ridiculous. Oh, is that why you're doing a genocide? Because they're burning the American flag? Oh, great. Oh, I was so scared. Stop killing children, and maybe they won't hate America any longer.
the flag of Israel. They burn American flags. They're anti-American. They're not MAGA. They're not supporters. You know, who do they support? You know who they support? They support Iran and its proxy, Hamas or Hezbollah. What does Iran do? Just understand, people who support Iran or speak on its behalf. Iran tried to assassinate President Trump.
Oh my God, he's trying so hard. Siding with the why don't more Palestinians side with Israel? I wonder why. Maybe because they're murdering them. That's a great question. If you were to entertain that question and go through the logical steps and not simply assume that Palestinians are barbaric animals who have just unlimited anti-Semitism, Jew hatred in their bloods, you would perhaps investigate this a little bit further and realize that, oh, they hate Israel because Israel's killing them. Israel's killing their families. Israel's blown up every school. Israel's blown up every hospital in the Strip. Israel's destroyed their lives. Israel's doing a genocide. Of course they're going to hate Israel. This is so much worse than the Nelk Boys led on in your talk yesterday. Yeah. They relied on me not watching the interview, but it doesn't matter. I was right, by the way. I didn't even watch this interview, and I knew exactly how this interview was going to unfold. Do you want to know why I didn't need to watch a single second of this interview to correctly and adequately clock exactly what took place in this interview? Because there is no other way to defend Israel. You have to say the same exact lies over and over again. And I know that Steiny and Kyle are not equipped to push back against these lies. They're just not. And I've heard these exact same talking points for decades at this point. They have not changed. So it seems like I didn't need to watch the interview to understand exactly why this would be bad. You want to know why I didn't need to watch this interview to know that it would be a bad interview in general? Because of the very fact that Benjamin Netanyahu, who notoriously refuses to interview with Israeli media, went to the Nelk Boys podcast. Because even CNN would probably offer a little bit more pushback than they would. That's it. And it's something that, like, you know, I think Steiny also recognized as well, which is why he said, well, you know, people promote stuff all the time, which is why I said this when he said, oh, well, people promote stuff on, they go on tours all the time. They promote stuff all the time on our podcast. They're using you guys to look good.
Hasan, bro, why does anybody, Hasan, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. Hasan, anyone goes on a podcast to promote whatever they're doing.
Yeah, but they're not. But Benjamin Netanyahu's not promoting a book, dog. He's promoting a genocide.
Bro,
that's the point.
OJ
He's not unveiling like a new release. While we're having this back and forth, a new plan to settle Gaza with Israelis was presented in the Knesset today. It includes the following elements: 1.2 million Jews will relocate to Gaza. All Palestinians will be expelled. 300,000 housing units will be built. High-tech agriculture and education centers will be built. This was never about defeating Hamas or getting back the hostages. It was always about the destruction of the Palestinian people to establish greater Israel. They're openly admitting that all the fucking time. What would you say to those who say interviewing a Houthi is still bad despite Israel's actions? I'd say that they're delusional. I'd ask them why they think that, and they would say, oh, well, they've done this, many of which is just like Saudi propaganda from the time when Saudi was like literally implementing a blockade with Western weapons and murdering a shit ton of civilians in Yemen. I would tell them that, of course, I'm going to interview any kind of militancy that I can within the confines of reason that is resisting against the Israeli genocide. Because if you think that Israel is doing a genocide, then of course people that are resisting against said genocide deserve to be heard. And if you think that Israel is doing a genocide, but you think all of the people that are resisting against that are criminals that are comparable to Israel's actions, then you don't think Israel's doing a genocide. Because there is no crime more severe than genocide. Humanizing militant resistance against Israel's genocidal actions is being morally on the right side against Israel's genocide. Humanizing Benjamin Netanyahu or other Israeli officials that are defending Israel's crimes here is literally doing propaganda for the genocide.
They were behind those assassination attempts?
They openly admit. By the way, they put out a price on his head. On mine too, by the way. Smaller price. I'm not offended.
They actually put a price on your head?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Oh my God. I don't care. I don't care about any of this. Oh, I can't watch the rest of this, dude. It's just so stupid. It's literally an hour-long faucet of Israeli propaganda with no pushback whatsoever. I will talk about the other thing, though, that they did, which was also bad. After this interview releases, and they're getting a ton of, here, I'll show you once again. They're getting like unimaginable backlash, which I could have told them if Steiny had reached out to me before they released this podcast. I would have been like, do not release that podcast. You're gonna get ass blasted into fucking oblivion. They turned around and they went to like as many right-wing critics of Israel as they could. But of course, the right-wing critics of Israel that they know are Holocaust deniers. Sneeko.
What, a bullet compared to a whole box full of gas? And you fit 6 million people over the span of 6 years?
Wait, so you think it was
okay, so how many people fit in there? Like maybe 100? How many times would you need to load that up? How much gas would it need to take? How do you get them all in there? How do the guards not get gas while they're putting them in there?
Nicholas Fuentes, who is literally an open Nazi.
Max says, if I take 1 hour to cook a batch of cookies and Cookie Monster has 15 ovens, working 24 hours a day, every day for 5 years, how long does it take Cookie Monster to make 6 million batches of cookies? The math doesn't quite seem to add up there. I don't think you'd result in 6 million, maybe 200 to 300,000 cookies. And I think the Red Cookie Association said something like that, probably 200 to 300,000 cookies baked, probably.
Sneeko, who's a Holocaust denier, Muslim revert that has questionable beliefs on pedophilia. And Myron Gaines, who is famous for yelling at women on his F Women podcast, who also happens to be a Holocaust denier. And then myself and Adam Friedland. So they added insult to injury in their damage control because of the backlash that they were receiving, which is also insane. In an apparent attempt at damage control, Nelk Boys streamed talk with conspiracy theorists, one of whom denies October 7 atrocities, falsely claims IDF is responsible for most deaths. Pro-Trump U.S. podcasters, the Nelk Boys, streamed conversations Monday with several anti-Semitic influencers after the release of their interview with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, in an attempt to limit the criticism they received from hosting the Israeli leader. The one-hour interview with Netanyahu on the Full Send podcast hosted by Kyle Forgard and Aaron Steinberg, known as the Nelk Boys, was recorded on July 8th during the Prime Minister's visit to Washington and released Monday. Commenters on the podcast, the host for hosting the Prime Minister amid the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Gaza and not asking Netanyahu tough questions on the matter. Zero pushback. You literally just let a war criminal talk freely for an hour to millions of fans. Just horrible, horrible. You guys are truly, one viewer commented. I am so happy the comment section knows how vicious and evil this man is. I can't believe Kyle's humanizing this man. Speechless, I'm at a loss for words, another wrote. Shortly after, the Nelk Boys began live streaming with influencers Sneeko, Myron Gaines, Hasan Piker, and Nick Fuentes, all known for circulating anti-Semitic and anti-Israel conspiracies who offer commentary on the interview. I love that they just so easily loop me in with these other dudes. Sneeko, who has been banned from YouTube and Twitch for anti-Semitic remarks, said Trump basically owned Netanyahu because the U.S. president pulled out a chair for Netanyahu after meeting earlier this month. How do you put America first if you send $4 billion to Israel every year, Sneeko asked the host, to which they responded that they agreed that Netanyahu's behavior was making it harder for Americans to support Israel. Myron Gaines claimed Netanyahu lied about a bunch of shit in the interview and falsely claimed a lot of the shit that happened on October 7 was a lie, referring to the 2023 Hamas massacre that sparked the ongoing war in Gaza. Gaines denied the occurrence of mass during the massacre and also claimed that Hamas's goal of the invasion was to capture as many hostages in exchange for prisoners instead of mass killings, adding, a lot of the innocent people that were killed by the IDF in an attempt to prevent Hamas from taking more captives. Dude, even when they're talking about what Sneeko said or what Myron Gaines said, they're not actually talking about the indefensible shit they have said, which is deeply anti-Semitic. They literally are just saying these guys are anti-Semites without explaining why they're anti-Semites. And then the only explainer they offer is because they're saying that Israel killed civilians on October 7, which is literally something that is true, something that was admitted by former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant when he said the Hannibal Directive was implemented on October 7. It is insane. It feels like I'm losing my mind when I hear Times of Israel or any other outlet reporting on the matter by basically saying, well, these guys are anti-Semitic. Why? Because one of them said, how can you be America first if you send $4 billion to Israel every year? If you think this is an anti-Semitic statement, you are delusional. These guys have said a ton of anti-Semitic shit. The ongoing war in Gaza has sparked when Hamas led terrorist rampage through the southern Israeli communities, murdering 1,200 people, mostly civilians, taking 251 hostages while committing and filming their numerous atrocities. Immediately after the massacre, anti-Israel conspiracy theorists claimed without evidence that most of the deaths were caused by IDF fire. Most of the deaths were not caused by IDF fire, for the record. That's not true. And denied acts of mass rape and torture. There's been overwhelming evidence of sexual violence and torture was used in the invading of terrorists. Piker slammed the Nelk Boys for hosting Netanyahu on his podcast, accusing of humanizing Netanyahu. But that's the thing. We'll have anyone on. Like next episode, we're going to have someone with a complete opposite ideology. Speaking to Nick Fuentes, who was known for opposing what he calls white genocide and Jewish subversion, Forgard emphasized that the goal of their podcast was to welcome anyone and allow them to form their own opinions. Do we even know either way for sure? No, but what we do know is Times of Israel itself also, IDF officers invoked defunct Hannibal Protocol during October 7 fighting report. This is their own reporting from July 7, 2024, a year ago. So when you package something that you yourself have reported on as an anti-Semitic conspiracy, all you're doing is saying anti-Semitic conspiracies are actually not anti-Semitic conspiracies, they're truths. The reason people are being critical, of course, is because the state of Israel and Netanyahu are extremely unpopular with the young people, Fuentes said, charging Israel's decline in popularity among Americans began after the war in Gaza began. Fuentes said that while he too was a controversial figure, Netanyahu, on the other hand, is currently prosecuting a war and has been prosecuting a war for 20 years and accused the prime minister of carrying out ethnic cleansing of Palestinians is also true. Talk about the shit that Nick Fuentes has said that is anti-Semitic. Talk about him being a Holocaust denier.
And in addition, you know, in this hypothetical, I imagine that if you took aerial photographs over the kitchens, you would need to see certain smokestacks to release the smoke from baking the cookies, and the smokestacks would project certain shadows, but I guess they're not visible in the aerial photographs taken over the kitchens.
Why would you? Like, this is the only thing that they've mentioned that is like even giving a little bit more credence into the anti-Semitism allegations launched towards a self-described neo-Nazi. Why the don't you just say that? During the podcast, Netanyahu was asked by Steinberg, I think you definitely have a tough job, but why do you think you're so hated worldwide? Oh, this was the saddest part of the interview, but the funniest. Well, a lot of propaganda, first of all. I'm not hated worldwide. He literally is not allowed to fly over certain states. I just received this. I just talked to someone, a rabbi, and he says he just heard from his brother who was in Europe, and one of the countries of Europe. He says he's being flooded. They know he's from Israel. All the people are coming and they say, you did this amazing thing for all of us. The Chancellor of Germany said Israel did the work for all of us. The new Chancellor of Germany said, referring to German Chancellor Friedrich Merz, not realizing that when Benjamin Netanyahu is such a repulsive figure that he comes out and says, this person actually defends me, that person's approval rating goes down. Just like the Nelk Boys' approval is in the shitter now because of their allegiance to Benjamin Netanyahu. Anyway, Ben Lorber reports, Haaretz is reporting that Israel is training MAGA Gen Z influencers to combat the growing criticism on the right. I don't think it's going to work, but it's important to stay aware of these propaganda initiatives. Founded in 2012 by Rabbi Naftali Tuli Wise, Israel 365 promotes support for Israel based on political, spiritual, and biblical principles. Its affiliated website states that the group stands unapologetically for the Jewish people's God-given right to the entire lands of Israel. I'm going to keep it $150 with you. If there was a majority disapproval of Israel among American Jews, they would literally give up on American Jews entirely, and they would only try to farm the evangelical base. This is why I have said time and time again that even if every single Jewish person in the United States of America became a committed, diehard anti-Zionist overnight, okay, that's not the case, but even if that happened, Israel would still do whatever the fuck it's doing, and America would still allow it. This is not about Judaism. This is not about protecting Jews. If anything, it literally harms Jews in general. I hope you understand that. The largest base of support for Israel in the United States of America is the evangelical Zionists, and even their numbers are diminishing across the board, and the support for Israel is also diminishing generationally, even among Zionist evangelicals, okay? Led by Israeli religious nationalists, Israel 365, Ben Lorder reports, is basically the Jewish wing of Christian Zionism. They think Christian support for Israel is crucial to fulfill the final stages of biblical prophecy and bring the end times. While they're based in Israel, their main role is to back Christians in fighting the culture war for Zionism in the U.S. Now, with MAGA Zionism in unprecedented crisis, the Israeli government handed them a contract without a tender to get in the trenches. An actual death cult. Of course, no Jewish person believes that the end of times is going to take place, where, of course, the end of times prophecy and the theological underpinning for the evangelical Zionist movement relies on the idea that like Israel will be a Jewish state for Jews only, and then all the Jews will go to Israel, and then Jesus Christ will come back and fight the League of Satan in Megiddo. This is literally what they believe. It's like anime, okay? It's an apocalyptic cult, basically, where Jesus Christ will come back to earth, the rapture will happen, Jesus will fight the forces of Satan in Megiddo, and all of the evangelical Christians will be sucked into the heavens. And you know what happens to the Jews, with the exception of 114,000 Jews that convert, by the way? If you don't convert, you're also going to hell. All the Jews then burn in hell at the end of that story. So obviously, it's not exact. 144,000 Jews get sucked to the heavens as long as they convert in that moment on the spot to evangelical Christianity. And every Jew that doesn't even get that that doesn't make the 144,000 cut, they burn in hell, eternal hellfire, eternal damnation. This is what they believe. Does that sound like a fucking pro-Jewish ideology to you? No, of course it does not. It's not. Having said that, obviously no one fucking believes this shit except for the evangelical Zionists. But no Jewish person actually unironically believes this shit. They just know that these guys are idiotic fools that will defend Israel unconditionally. Way more than Jewish Americans ever will. That is the reality, because American Jews are getting educated. American Jews are constantly disagreeing with other American Jews and Israeli Jews especially. They have American Jewish interests. It's too hard to convince a ton of American Jews to be unconditionally in support of Israel. That hasn't stopped Israel from consistently churning out Zionist social conditioning from early age. But it's that simple.